there's something more I want to talk about, which is the documents in the conference. I believe you may all feel confused before. You may all feel confused about all the documents I have mentioned, operative clauses, preamble clauses, but don't worry, I'll talk about this now. So, working paper is the very basic document before the DR comes out. It's simply just how are you going to introduce your ideas to other delegates. It doesn't have to be very formal. It can be a random drawing flow chart, or a very beautiful document with pictures or maps, or a very colorful bubble chart, or a random doodle. Okay, I'm kidding. You cannot submit this kind of working paper. So after you submit a working paper, you can take your working paper and go discuss it with other delegates, sharing your ideas. And it doesn't have to be as formal as DRs. However, DR, the most important thing in the conference, it's composed of 3 parts: heading, preamble clauses, and operative clauses. Heading is like the very beginning, or the introduction of a DR. And the DR, after you submit the DR will be assigned DR 1.x by chair. So this is the number of your DR. You have to use this number every time you want to talk about this DR. And also, in the heading of the DR, it also has to have committee name. For example, in this DR, it's dissect. And also it has to specify the topic area, which is macro-terrorism in this DR. And also it has to collect signatories from 1/5 of the present countries. Like all these countries' names are signatories, and it's listed in alphabetical order. And here comes preamble clauses. What is preamble clauses? Preamble clauses is like introduction and the reason for this DR. It tells you why we want to draft this DR, but it doesn't have any realistic action or realistic effect. Take a look at the preamble clauses in this DR. The General Assembly recalling blah 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 blah, recalling the Convention Against Corruption and the 1988 Convention and the United States blah 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 blah. So this is why we want to draft the DR. But here is some form you have to abide by when you're drafting preamble clauses. Take a look at the orange line. In the beginning of every sentences, it has to start with participles, recalling, which is participles is verb plus ing, which is 分词. And at the end of every sentences, it has to end with comma, 逗号. Don't forget, this is really important. Oh, wait. And have you noticed that the verb that is in the beginning of every sentences is a little special. It's not like eat or sing or jump. It has a certain forms. For example, recalling, recognizing, keeping in mind. But don't worry, here is a list of the verb you can use in preamble clauses. But don't worry, you don't have to memorize all of these. We will give you a handout in your first mock conference, so you don't have to write these down. Here are several examples: affirming, alarmed by, expecting, keeping in mind, recalling, blah blah blah. But it doesn't have to start with verb ing all the time. For example, there is deeply concerned, deeply conscious of, or deeply convinced, or guided by. So, oops, this is the list. Or, yeah, guided by. Okay, so after preamble clauses, here comes the most realistic part of a DR, which is operative clauses. You see the word operative, right? Option, yeah. So it's clauses with actual effect and action in the DR. If you have decided that you want to do something, then it should be included in operative clauses. So, okay, this is a little bit complicated, but don't worry. Did you see realizing on the top? This is preamble clauses. This is preamble clauses that I have mentioned. It starts with participles. And here is the operative clauses. Recommends, emphasizes. So there is also certain forms that you have to follow when you're drafting operative clauses. Every sentence has to start with verbs with S, which is third person indicative tenses, 第三人称单数. And then if you have subclauses like emphasizes blah 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 and subclause A, subclause B, then your subclauses has to start with coding A, B, C. And also, in the end of every operative clauses, it has to end with semicolon, 分号. Don't forget. And however, the last sentences has to end with a period. No, it's not in the picture, but don't forget it. Wait. And do you also recognize that there are some verbs that are really kind of special? Here's a list of operative verbs that you can use, but you don't have to memorize it too, either. So you can use accepts, approves, condemns, confirms, blah 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 blah, but don't forget to add an S after the verb. So this is the structure of a DR: heading, preamble clauses, and operative clauses. So after DR, I will talk about amendment. Amendment is also composed of two parts, which is heading and operative clauses. But it doesn't have preamble clauses for amendments. So heading is basically the introduction, the beginning of preamble clauses. And it has to be a name, Amendment 1.3.1 on the top of amendment. And it has committee name and also topic area and 1/8 signatories on it. And operative clauses is the format is exactly like a DR, which is verb plus S. But in operative clauses, it has to specify what exactly do you want to do with the DR. What do you want to revise? So, but also one point that is noteworthy is that amendment can only correct operative clauses. You cannot change anything in preamble clauses because there is no use changing preamble clauses because it has no actual effect, right? So you can only change operative clauses. And so the form is same as DR. It starts with third person indicative tense and ends with semicolon. And the very end of the sentence, the last sentence ends with period. So, however, if what you want to revise is only like grammatical or wording mistake, you don't have to write an amendment. What you have to do is simply submit it to the dais, and it doesn't have to be voted upon, and you don't have to collect any signatories for this kind of mistake correction. It's okay. So tired, aren't you? Let's play a game. This is why we